To conclude our two-part episode of the Public Narrative Podcast with Jhmira Alexander, I'm joined with my distinguished guests, Yaseen Abdus-Saboor and Dr. Kenneth Nole. We talked about a lot during part one, and we're going to, of course, finish up that conversation in part two. So we talked about, of course, much to do with the trauma that folks experience, and particularly that the Black and brown men experience, and how you all cope with that. But let's introduce some joy into this process, of course, and think through, what do you do for self-care? How do you take care of yourselves?
To start, I have a really fun and I think relaxing skincare routine that I usually do a few times a week. If not just on Sundays, just to reset and get ready for the week. I also do a lot of things, and I think the pandemic really helped this out, was just figuring out what things I like to enjoy on my own. Yeah. And it could just be me going vintage shopping or just going out to get coffee and just relaxing, different things like that. But certain solitary time, time to myself, so where I can just reflect and also do things physically to take care of myself as well.
Yeah,
that's right. For me, the very first thing is I eat extremely healthy.
You do?
I do. You know it. I drink.
You need a Pinterest board or the meals.
So I have a cookbook that's underway, and where I just learned how to cook just really, really healthy foods or traditional foods with a healthier option. And so for me, I eat really, really healthy. I can eat raw veggies or fruit or just some nuts or drink a lot of water. But every day I do at least 30 minutes of cardio, exercising every single day, maybe 5 days a week. So eating healthy, cardio. But I love going to the nail shop, manicure, pedicure. I think as a Black man, as a man in general, I just love to have good hygiene and to present myself in an excellent way. My mom always taught me that your first impression is your best impression, and so I want to make sure that when I step into a room with anybody, that I have that best impression, and so I do that. And then also devotion. Every morning I'm praying. Every morning I'm meditating. It just starts my day. As growing up, my grandmother would say, "You got to command your day," and sometimes life, gets very chaotic, and you lose control over certain things. But if you have focus for the day, no matter what comes, if you command the day, it's going to be all right. So,
yeah, I love that. What is it about your personal narratives that have helped you to really shape and shine in the world around you?
That's a really good question. Yeah. Help shape and shine in the world around you. I think similar to what we talked about, I really know myself. I feel like I've been a very self-aware person since I've been young, and people are like, he's just shy, he's quiet, but a lot of people who really know me know that I'm very aware of everything that's happening and really very reflective on a lot of the things with myself. And I think that turns into a type of drive and a passion that I think can be sensed around me. When it comes to things that I'm very passionate about, and all the work that I engage in, it's really infectious because I'm aware of myself, my strengths, what I can do, and the possibilities. And I think it really shows around the people that I engage with, and that I think that helps. That definitely shines out in all the work that I do.
Yeah, that's good. I think for me, and I said it before, I alluded to it, but it is my faith. And for me, whether I'm in my professional setting, I understand that I have a seat at the table. For me, and it'll just show up and pop up everywhere I go. But there's a saying that says, he will give you the key of David, and he'll open doors that no man can shut and close doors that no man can open. And so I'm at a place in my life where I understand I am not necessarily here because I'm smart. I'm here because I have a seat at the table. And so I think for me, whenever I'm sitting and I'm talking to a funder, or whenever I'm trying to figure out a project or bring a solution, it is my faith, knowing who I am at the table, knowing that there's a table prepared for me in the presence of my enemies. All of that other stuff, it adds the energy that drives my work and the shine. When people, I'm real loud, and Yaseen will tell you, and I'm real loud. I come with energy in the mornings because I do set the tone for my day. Some days I'm not my best self, but I show up because I understand that joy is not a feeling. And so I think that one thing that drives my work, people are like, man, you just really cheerful. No, I'm not always cheerful, but I know that the one thing, it's going to be okay. And so whatever I'm doing, I know how to be myself. I know how to be professional, and I know how to bring my faith to the table. If I'm having a hard time and I can't get through anything, I know who can bring me through it. So,
Amen. Let me tell you that you bring up something that's really prevalent right now. We talk a lot about like toxic is just a word that I think is kind of overused, but we talk about toxic positivity as well. And it's interesting because my therapist last week, she asked me, she said, can you recall a moment this week where you had false positivity? And I couldn't. And so to your point, like you have those days where you're not your best self, but being able to lean into like preserving the energy that a thing brings. And I think, you know, as I'm listening to you all and how you take care of yourself, it's like you have commanded your life even to, you know, not be like this breeding ground for confusion. And I think that's what allows people to gravitate towards you in the way that it does, because you know your energy is magnetic, but it's only because of how you have really, like you said, set the tone, right? And as you continue to set the tone, just in the communities that you serve, like, were you always interested in public service? Is it something that you were drawn into? I mean, because it's full of problems, full of challenges, but like, how do you remain connected, and what drew you?
I'll tell you who I wanted to be. I wanted to be Marcus from Boomerang. I wanted to be Eddie Murphy. That's exactly who I wanted to be. I wanted I still do. That's exactly who my role model was growing up in the 90s, right? I wanted the Mercedes. I wanted the high-rise office building. I wanted a secretary. I wanted to make decisions. That's where it started. Eddie Murphy did that for me. I hope he gets a chance to see. He did that for me, right? And so basically, driving, I wanted to be a business major, and I did that. I went to Columbia College before I went to Morehouse College, transferred to Morehouse College. And I was a business and marketing major. And so I sat there saying, hey, I'm going to create my own business. I'm going in here and I'm going to be a CEO. I'm going to be an executive director. Didn't know that the same thing I wanted to be, I am today. It was just in a different capacity. I'm sitting at the table making decisions. I don't have a secretary, but I definitely have admin capabilities. And I'm able now not just to make these decisions, but God gave me a good car. I got a nice BMW. You know what I mean? So you know what I mean. So everything that I always wanted in that role, it came. I didn't want to be in public service, but it started in education, and then from education into the nonprofit work field, where I could learn different skill sets for how to talk with funders and how to be in different spaces. And now here I am working with boys and young men of color on a different scale. Now, I'm not in the classroom with them, but I'm making decisions for them. So
that's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
So for me, when going into high school, I thought I was going to be an engineer. I was like, I'm good at math. My dad's a math teacher. My cousin's an engineer. I'm like, I'm going to do this because I know I'll get a lot of money from it. I'm like, I need to make a sustainable wage, all that. But going into college, I've always been an artist. I've always been into clothing design, and I went into graphic design after a few signs were just like, follow what you want to do, what your passion is. And then, like as I was saying, getting out of college at DePaul, I was looking for jobs, and I was like, I know I could do this graphic design some ads, I'll make it look good, all that. But having the opportunity to go into a nonprofit space where it was serving youth that looked like me, and I was just more passionate about that work, and I was like, if I can bring my skill set to this, I know I want to do this. And I don't think it's any coincidences, and I'm still building my own business with my artistry as well, and diving into different different mediums as well, but it wasn't what I chose to do, but it was just something that my heart just brought me to.
Yeah. I spent a lot of money on school.
I did too.
Learned about media, learned journalism, worked at a television station.
Yeah.
Only to know 3 months before graduation I didn't want to do anything in media. Really.
Oh wow.
And I didn't want to do it because the stories that we reported on first thing in the morning were who was shot, who was stabbed, who was murdered. I didn't want to tell those kind of stories.
Come on.
And I left school knowing that much.
Wow.
And I worked a few jobs that made me know that I never wanted to work a job that I didn't love the work I was doing.
Yeah.
And from then on, it made it easier to weed out what opportunities were for me and what opportunities were not.
Yeah.
But when you say that about like being a public servant, I never saw. I will be real honest with you. I never sought out to be a leader. Ever. Never sought out to be a leader. But I think sometimes when it's evident that you have certain skills and certain abilities, you can't deny it. And why else are you here but to fulfill a purpose that most times you're not even really interested in to begin
100%.
with. If you really, I think you gave a very clear and succinct definition of staying in your lane. And understanding like, if this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm interested in, what do I need to do? And I don't think enough young men or young women get the opportunity to think on that level. Like you mentioned in part one about your student had to brought a gun to school because he needed to get money for his family to eat. Young people don't get to think, some young people, not all, but some young people don't get a chance to think on the level of, if I make this decision, where am I going next? A lot of times they're in survival mode, and because they're in survival mode, they get deemed as menace to society, 100%. Or just problem children. But that's absolutely not the case. And thankfully, because we know where we come from, and oftentimes the stories that are told of our people, we're able to advocate on that level. Have you ran into any folks who are not African American? Who, of course, align with, this vision for boys and young men of color and young women of color, who then say, even though I'm not of this ethnicity, I still see, where I can lean in and lend my agency and my power.
Yeah. I mean, so many people. But we've had a chance to work with an awesome woman by the name of Leslie Bella.
That's what I was thinking.
And Leslie has been absolutely phenomenal. Leslie is a white black woman, and she's definitely a friend to us. But the reason why I say that is because she understands. She spent time understanding black culture, and not just being a part of it, just to say, "Hey, I'm white. I just want to be a part of it." No, she spent seasons understanding, working in the trenches and enjoying it. You don't find too many people working in the trenches who are not of black descent, who are understanding the journey. I had a teacher at the school that I worked at right before, maybe a couple of years ago, and I was helping to build out their social emotional learning pipeline and pathways. And white teacher, male, had been at that school for 30 years. He came to my office and he said to me, he says, "Dr. Nole, it's the black kids. They are just bad." I said, number one, this school is 80% Hispanic, 20% African American. So you mean to tell me that the 20% African American students in this school are the worst students, and they're the ones with the most behavior issues? I said, hard to believe. I said, but let me know this. Have you ever gone to the house and sat on their couches? Have you ever talked to mom and daddy? Have you ever learned their story? And he said to me, "I've never been to their house." I said, "In 30 years, you've messed up." So you haven't got a chance to get in the trenches. And so Leslie has been the one to be in the trenches. She helped us uplift the stories of boys and young men of color through art. Absolutely phenomenal, and I can't wait to work with her in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I won't even answer it because Leslie Bella is someone who I thought of immediately. But with that, I think it's rare to find non-black people in this space who come into it with the guilt removed from it. I think that's something that's very powerful that I think Leslie has, where it's like, once you remove your guilt, because guilt is something very selfish. It's like the fact that you have guilt, know that means that you know something is wrong, but you're focusing on that and not doing something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And once you remove that and you can become an accomplice with us,
Mm-hmm.
like, then that's
Wow.
when a lot of change is made. And we have come across people like that for sure. But yeah, I'll go with Kenneth's answer on
Let me
that.
say, let me say something.
that's
Let me say
powerful
something.
too.
When
Yeah.
you went there, on the inside, I was like, "Oh, Yaseen got bars. You got bars. Like, break it down."
Right.
When you remove the guilt, I think it's so difficult for folks to do that because if they remove, this is as I understand it,
Yeah.
if they remove the guilt, who are they rejecting that
Right.
either projected that on them,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, many of us have relationships with, non-African American, non-Hispanic people,
Yeah.
have relationships with white people
Yeah.
that have given us a glimpse of
Yeah.
how they think
Yeah.
when it comes to these type of sensitive issues.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, they may never say it publicly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But there's something about the relationship they have with any of us
Yep.
that invites them to share some of their own sensitivities
Yep.
around the issue.
Come on.
And
Oh, that's good.
when I tell you the number of compassionate white people I have come across,
Yep.
that I'm just like, I certainly can't make them,
Yeah.
but I certainly can't go on this campaign like,
Yeah.
if you would only just speak openly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It gives you a true understanding of where we live.
Yep. Yep.
And it helps me to not be confused
Yeah.
by anything that I see
100%.
in the media, in public space.
Yeah.
Like, this is much like we see, like, when different things are at our doorstep. We talked a little bit about just relationships or the lack thereof with
Yep.
police officers.
Yeah.
In a program that Public Narrative supports the Chicago Police Department with, the Youth District Advisory Council Summer Leadership Institute, one of our sessions we talked about that. And one officer said, oftentimes we meet people on the worst days of their lives.
Wow.
And
wow.
to come into a situation knowing that and
Mhm.
being willing to lend compassion is something that, to some extent it can't be taught,
Yeah.
but it should be expected of a role that is supposed to support.
Yeah.
I'm sharing all of that to say, there was, when we announced the Studs Terkel Community Media Awards winners this year, a journalist also said the same thing. We meet people
Wow.
oftentimes on the worst days of their lives.
Yeah.
We got to think about how we flip this narrative. If everybody is meeting folks on the worst days of their lives, when do you get a chance to experience me at my best?
Come on.
And that supersedes race. That
Yeah.
supersedes sex.
100%.
That supersedes gender. That supersedes, like, all of these things make up who we are, when it comes to our identity.
Yeah.
But at my best, when do you get a chance to experience it?
Yeah.
I think that's the importance of changing the narrative and making sure we're uplifting more positive stories, because that's a small opportunity to show people at their best. And I love that. That's amazing.
But do you know how many people who are walking around not with the ability to tell their stories? They've been holding on to their stories for 40 years. I drive down 79th Street in Chicago and I watch black men with mental illnesses, and I've been watching it for years. I would love to do a project one day with these research capabilities to do something on black men with mental health on 79th Street.
Yeah.
79th Street is powerful when people drive up and down because it's number one, it's a landmark, right?
Yeah.
But I've watched black men talk to themselves year after year, and I always wondered what's going on. Many people, and this could go different ways, but a lot of people are so bottled up with their story, and because they don't have an outlet to tell their story, something clicks in their mind. People are walking around depressed. It's so good that we're talking about therapy. People are walking around depressed. People are walking around with anxiety, and they don't have the outlet. So the only thing that they could do is, the worst moment in their life is it's almost like it's every day, right? And everything it blows up, and then you find them on the news, and we find them being shot, or we find them whatever, right? In whatever state. So we definitely got to do better and meet them on a good day.
You mentioned that, and really thinking about like how people are processing their emotions and not allowing for different situations to cause them to blow up. That's exactly how I started going to therapy. When I came into this opportunity, I knew for just relationships that I had watched really like dissipate, over the last few months before this opportunity at Public Narrative, that if I had not started going to therapy, I was going to blow this opportunity.
Wow.
There was going to be something to happen that would cause me to just like let it all go. And I became the president or co-president at the time in November of 2018. I started going to therapy and paying out of pocket in October of 2018. And only because at that point I knew myself. I knew there were things that, some situations were beyond my control, but I knew that I needed to get a handle of how I responded to whatever was happening, regardless of if I was in control or not. And you mentioned that about like equipping people. It's funny because I had my nephew with me, and I had gone to the teacher's store to get him some like handwriting books and stuff. And he loves story time. So I bought him, I'm starting him like this little book collection actually in my room. But I bought him 2 books about emotions. Because the more I talk, he's 5. But the more I talk to him, it helps me understand that he's feeling all sorts of emotions. That as I'm in certain workshops, folks are like, well, how do you feel? And don't tell me good. Good is not an emotion. And it's obvious that we haven't always been taught the different types of emotions to describe how we feel. So we're going to change the narrative. How do we do that with young children who are learning themselves? And it's nothing for he and I to have just, first of all, we roast each other. We go, he's 5, but he can signify. But it's nothing for us to have what some might consider a very mature conversation. But for me, when it comes to children, if they can form the question and use the word correctly, I have to answer them honestly because it's on their heart and mind.
Jhmira, you said a whole lot, and I'm thinking a whole lot. Most children are told to go to their rooms when they're children, and so they don't know how to have a conversation or to articulate how they feel because again they've been pushed to their room, right? You also said another thing just about therapy and paying for it out of pocket. What about those in the inner city who don't have the funds and the money to pay for a therapist, right? So they don't have an outlet and they feel as if their story is too much or what they bring to a relationship is too much, so they don't want to boggle other people down with their same old sad story, which is why we have Miss USA, former Miss USA in New York, who jumped from a building because again she didn't want to throw off on anybody what was going on inside of her, even though she was seeing a therapist, right? So Black and Hispanic people in the urban context may not have the funds, but I'll tell you one place that is the therapy for Black people, and that's the salon and the barbershop. And so Black men have a place to get therapy every week. I would go my mama would pay for it every week. And that's when I had hair. I don't have any hair. And so I would love to go to the barbershop and you would hear men talk about hip hop. Men would literally have get their hair cut and stay in there for 5 hours, just staying there because it's a place just to talk. The movie Barbershop depicts what's happening in the inner city of Chicago, but how men love the barbershop. The fun, the cursing, the laughing, the relationship talk. Men have this sense of, and I said it in my mind, but confidence, but I would like to also say it's a healthy arrogancy. When you get out of the chair and you have this razor sharp line, you can't tell me nothing. But then I leave also with language. I could have a better marriage because I heard it from the barbershop. I could be a better father because I heard it from the barbershop. Women, when they in the salon, I've seen Black women fight in the salon. However, they always talk about something positive when it comes to surviving as a community. And so I think that's one thing that we have to really hone in on. If Black people can't get therapy, one thing they're going to pay for is their hair. And so that's something that we're going to do through Public Narrative in the future. It's just more so an initiative for boys and men of color to have some connection with the barbershop and have resources flow through that.
Absolutely. It's interesting because it just reminds me of like all of our relationships serve some sort of purpose. And to your point about the model who committed suicide, not wanting to dump on other people.
Yeah.
I think it's powerful to just know what relationships can hold what you carry.
Need a place to vent.
And thankfully, like in learning how to leverage, it's one thing we talk a lot about, like being able to network and, your network is your net worth. And scratch all the slogans and the cliches. Like when it comes down to it, who is in your corner? And who has the ability to hear your pain and your disappointments and even be a shoulder to cry on without holding it against you in another season of your life, right? And that's something that I think is rare, but I think that's how we need to learn how to lean into our relationships. I keep me a few sister circles and for different reasons, right? But collectively, they make up these different circles and groups of people, not just like colleagues, but even relatives. Like they make up different elements of who I am as an individual. The thing I love, I try to keep weekends sacred and make that family time because that's where I don't have to be. I told you I never saw myself. I didn't see myself as a leader. That's where I don't have to be a leader. I don't have to be the president. I don't have to be the spokesperson or any of that. Now, they have been recruiting me for family events and things to be the PR and all this kind of stuff. But I do that out of service and out of love. But there's no expectation to be on this stage or this platform. And you get a chance to really tap into who you are as a person. I think a lot of times people chase after popularity, and this is one of the things that I just do not like about social media because it's not congruent with who I project to be online may not be congruent. I won't say it's always that way. But may not be congruent with who I am in real life.
That's exactly right.
And if I can just say it this way, to me it just seems a bit schizophrenic if I have to keep up these different personas,
of course,
that are not even the real me. So how do you all keep that balance and not drive yourselves crazy with how you show up online for how people, receive you in person?
I think after post-pandemic or, where we are now after 2020, social media, Instagram, TikTok, number one, we understand you can make money off of it. So now people are working their way off of a job, right? So they're trying to either, number one, compare themselves to people who have already done it. And especially if they're people of color, it's this high glamorous lifestyle that we have to live in order to be successful. And I think that it is breaking down the mental bandwidth and the capacity and the mental health of Black people who would like to journey forward in success, because now they have a depiction in social media of what it looks like, and that's not what it is. So people are literally fighting for their lives, because the only way I'm going to make money is I got to be online, I got to neglect my family, and I got to do this and I got to do that. And you have people who are successful, but I think that now we live in this fast-paced society where Black people are trying their best to become something without the restrictions or the limitations of people in certain spaces. But the way that I do it, Jhmira, is I literally I'll delete it off my phone. Like there's sometimes when I just take Facebook and Instagram off my phone to just get peace of mind, because I'll wake up and I'll look to see what my friends are doing or something like that. But now more than anything, I realize that it offsets my day. If the first thing I do, I wake up and I look at Instagram, or I've seen something that's made me compare myself, and it's messed up my entire day. And so when I get to a place like that where I see it, I feel it, I take it off my phone, and I'll spend days not actively engaging. So
that's very key. Going without social media when you need it, and I think having that awareness of it. I think with social media, I don't post a lot. I do that intentionally because it's like you don't realize the type of feedback you get, the type of adrenaline rush that's there when you are posting things and people are reacting. It's like, if you do that a lot, it's probably going to do a little bit something like your mental a little bit. So I definitely don't use it as much as that. And just knowing when to be off of it and understanding that it's not real, like using it more for inspiration than like admiration.
That's good
in comparison.
Totally. The thing that yes to everything you all said. The thing that amazes me is how people are leveraging this as a business. But what I don't love is when I hear those stories of folks who are, teaching folks how to get the bag, this, that, or the other, but then they're scamming people.
Come on.
And so the money might really be real. But what you're delivering, people can cash in on that. And so I would love to see impact for, a lot of the content and materials and things that people are sharing, that folks who are buying into it, that they actually get what they're looking for. I too disconnect from time to time, and when I do plug in again, and granted, we teach social media workshops, right? But when I do plug in again, it's all aligned with purpose.
That's right. That's right.
And for me, it has to be. And it's funny because on some of my feeds, I started off. I mean, some social media experts may say don't do this, but I started off posting content that inspired me to keep going. Yeah. And eventually, it started encouraging other people. Mm-hmm. And so it's still that platform that, for me, it's still that platform that it's not so much about what other people are looking for, but it coincides with how I want to show up in person.
That's right.
And when I first started working with brand strategists and things, they had all these ideas, and you can put this out and make sure you do this. And I would just stop them and tell them, there are people who know me in real life, and I never want to be so disconnected from myself that I'm not the me that I know and love, which means I can't show up for the people that matter most.
That's right.
Because I don't even recognize, I'm trying to feed you a facade. And my nephew came in, and he came in yesterday. He said my nickname, which I'm not going to say on here, but he said my nickname, and I said, "Where'd you get that from?" Not I called you that. And I'm like, okay. So I never want to lose sight of what has made the fullness of my life, and I just would really hope that people get to a place, especially as folks are exploring the metaverse. We have one project partner who's interested in how can we navigate this and bring young people into the fold. I really believe that just the virtual space period is much like what metaverse is evolving into. But I would really love, it's this movie, I don't know if you all have seen it, called The Surrogates. Yes. With Boris Kojo. No, it's pretty old. But in the movie, in the world, he's this young man, affluent. He's the what was Eddie Marcus?
I haven't seen it.
Marcus Graham. He's the Marcus Graham character. But at home, he's this older man, balding, gray, and he's navigating this virtual world, this virtual space as this younger man. And there's such a disconnect. So I'm saying all that to say, my hope is that, we leverage these things to truly better ourselves and the world around us, and not become so detached that we don't, even know who we are.
That's right.
Why we're here, what we can do with our gifts and talents. Technology is great. We can leverage it and use it for all sorts of things. But imagine if you had power virtually and in person. Come on. Imagine that. Then what?
That's right.
That's right. Then what? Yeah. And so I think that as we continue to work with young people and continue to really challenge them to lean into their stories, because there was another thing you said when you mentioned that about people having stories just bottled up in them. Well, quite frankly, older generations, what went on at home stayed at home.
It stayed at home.
And we became really, experts really in keeping secrets.
Silence,
And I'm not saying that everybody got to know your business.
Right.
But I think when it starts to really erode your confidence and your self-worth is when, you got to reach out and receive help. So, 100%. One place that I'm thinking of, even as we're having this conversation, NAMI, Illinois is working on something that I don't think for the time of this recording that I can really talk very much more about, but it will be public knowledge very soon. Nonetheless, it's not popular to go to therapy in our communities. No. It's not popular to talk among folks that we should be able to trust. It's not popular to reach out for help. We are notorious for figuring it out on our own, and oftentimes it costs us severely. How have you all learned to trust the world around you, even though the world around you is not always so welcoming?
I would say it's because of the friends that I have, my best friends, the circle of friends that I have that keep me grounded.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way. I don't think I'm in a place now, even as a man of color, where I trust the world yet because of what's still going on. But there is something to keep me grounded so that I don't show up in a negative way to society, so that I can continue to do the work that I'm called to do. So, yep.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with Kenneth. Like, I don't know if I'm at the place where I really trust the world around me, but I believe so much in the good that I see and what's possible that it allows me to continue to drive and continue to try to reach new heights of betterment for myself and for people around me. So I think about it that way. That was a tough question to even like as a black man in America, can you really trust the world around you?
Oh no.
Like you have to have trust in your community, like because that's who's at the end of the day gonna hold you up and keep you there. But the overall world is hard. It's hard to.
Well, I just appreciate you all showing up continuously.
Absolutely.
You know, I think it can be tiring when you don't have a space where you can fully lean in and be your full self.
That's right.
But to be consistent and do it in a way that you don't. And I don't even know this, so maybe this isn't a follow-up question, but do you ever feel like you abandon yourself in how you show up for other people?
Woo!
Keep them questions coming.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are times that I had to abandon myself because I had to put food on the table. And so there's a way you show up if you show up as a man of color in a space and it is not accepted, you lose the ability to protect the very thing that's close to you.
Wow.
And so that's abusive in some sense. And most black men, most men of color have to do it for the sake of their families, which is why we have so much aggression, right? And so, I had to abandon my joy sometimes to be in spaces so that I can make sure my wife and my daughter had a roof over their head. Even though I'm a well-credentialed man, I'm an educated black man, still in all, there's spaces where even in everything that I am, I could not come with everything that I came with because I had to abide by the rules. And if I broke them, I was done. And I think one thing that I've learned as a black man, being who I am, is that you have to have multiple areas to reach so that when one stream closes, multiple ones are open. I think that should be now the story of every black family because we've learned through the struggle, right? So, yeah.
I try my best to bring my full self wherever I am, and I think a lot of it is like, because I'm into clothing design and art, I'm like, I'm never gonna throw away the way that I present myself. I'm always gonna stay firm in that, and I kind of dare somebody to say something like almost, but I'm gonna be me wherever.
Please,
I'm gonna be me wherever. But it has been times where, and like I said, growing up, going to a majority white like high school and middle school, you know when to reserve some things, but you also, through that, you understand that it's no reason to at all. It's only hindering everything around you and yourself. So when you show up as yourself all the time, wherever you are, it's only going to open more doors. And I started to see that more and more, like, the older I got, and from seeing other people do it as well, and inspired me, like, oh, like, he's super free, like, I could be free too, like, I could just do me, like, and it'll only open more doors.
It's interesting because I'm seeing different spans of history as you all are talking. You know, the example you gave of, needing to do what you need to do in order to protect and cover your family reminds me of slavery.
Oh, man.
In that, black men couldn't be their full selves as leaders and protectors for, whatever might happen to them at the hand of a slave master.
That's right.
And what is so just compelling is that though we don't have slavery in the traditional sense, right? The spirit of it still very much so exists. Yes. The attitude of it, the arrogance of it, the abuse, and just quite frankly, the disgust of it. To want to lord over another individual as though you can completely command their will.
100%.
And that's where I love working with young people, because they are still very much so impressionable. There are things they see and know in the world that they know aren't right, that they don't like. Mm-hmm. They do have respect. They know how to tame their tongue and wait until an appropriate moment. Mm-hmm. Some more so than others. Yep. But the impression that I hope is left with them is that if anything is to change, it's because you're going to change it.
Come on.
And I love that, and leaning into your full self and inspire others to do the same, because that gives us a stark reality of, again, where we've been, how far we have not come.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Because there's lots of talk about it, and there's plenty of platforms that talk about it, but where's the action?
That's right.
And I never wanted to be, so I did not see myself as a leader, but I never, in even accepting the leadership role, I never wanted to be a leader who was all talk and no action.
That's right.
And I appreciate that most about the work that we do in our community as it reaches safety, health, and education, and thinking about how do we engage people, because we can talk till we're blue in the face, but it's going to go, our voices aren't the only ones that need to be heard. Our stories aren't the only ones. Right? And so there are people who oftentimes, because they've learned to keep quiet and go with the flow and just wait for things to pass and wait for things to change, they don't recognize the change agents within, and they don't recognize the power they have to lean into their story. So I am so excited about the vision that you all have for this work. Yeah. It has been a long time coming. Goodness, that's another story for another episode. But it's been a long time coming, and I'm so thankful that you all continue to show up regardless of the experiences that you've had, and that you have found your joy and you are lending it to us. I really do appreciate that, and I look forward to all that you all do here at Public Narrative. And thank you for being guests and sharing your story.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure.
Of course.
Appreciate you.
And thank you for joining us for this very special 2-part episode of the Public Narrative Podcast. I'm your host, Jhmira Alexander. I've been joined by Yaseen Abdus-Saboor and Dr. Kenneth Nole. We'll see you next time.